Howdy, y'all. I realize we're halfway through the first book of the Well-Tempered Clavier, and maybe you could use a little break. Maybe you could use an intermission to stretch your legs and your ears and go to the bathroom, maybe buy a cocktail at the bar. So I thought I'd play some music of America's Bach. Did you know we have a Bach that lived right here in America? Here are some highlights of his life. I have to read because he was born right here in Texas, near Texarkana. Grew up in a musical family. He was a prodigious talent as a child. By the 1880s, he was traveling the South as a professional musician. In 1893, he was at the Chicago World's Fair. He was exposed to all types of classical music, classical theory, classical forms. He moved to Sedalia, Missouri in 1894 to earn a living as a piano teacher and as a composer. He began publishing his music in 1895, and it was the publication of his Maple Leaf Rag in 1899 that brought Scott Joplin fame and notoriety. It goes like this. If you spent more than 10 minutes with me, you've probably heard it. He would never, unfortunately, reach that level of success again in his lifetime. In 1901, Scott Joplin moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where he continued to compose and publish. He wrote books called The School of Ragtime that taught young people how to compose and how to write in ragtime and how to play. He wrote an opera called A Guest of Honor, which focused on the 1901 visit of Booker T. Washington to the White House to meet Theodore Roosevelt. Unfortunately, the score was confiscated in 1903 due to lack of payment of bills, and a lot of his belongings were taken. So we no longer have that score. It's nowhere to be found, the score for A Guest of Honor. In 1907, he moved to New York City to find a producer to help produce a new opera. He was trying to move past the ragtime that had made him famous. Unfortunately, he was never able to, and he did not have the same success that he ever would. His second opera, Tremonisha, as it was called, was never fully staged during his life. In 1916, he descended into dementia as a result of syphilis. He was admitted to the Manhattan State Hospital in January of 1917 and died there 3 months later at the age of 48. I'm 48. Scott Joplin's death is widely considered to mark the end of ragtime as a mainstream music format. But I would submit it was ragtime that gave birth to swing, jazz, R&B, gospel, rock and roll. Without ragtime, without those early beginnings here in America, all of those musical forms would have never come to be. Joplin's music was rediscovered and returned to popularity in the 1970s with the release of a million-selling album recorded by Joshua Rifkin. The following this was followed by the Academy Award-winning film The Sting in 1973, which featured several of Joplin's compositions, most notably The Entertainer. Tremonisha was finally produced in full to wide acclaim in 1972. In 1976, Scott Joplin was posthumously awarded the Pulitzer Prize for music. So in many ways, Bach and Joplin were similar figures. They both came from large musical families. They both were talented kids. They both were teachers. They both were largely forgotten after they died, but have since been rediscovered and are now part of the musical lexicon. And just as Bach sort of brought harmony and tuning to the forefront of music, he helped promote that, so too did Joplin bring rhythm and syncopation into music to the point where we can't live without it. It's part of our everyday music, and everything that you hear on the radio has those rhythms built into it. So, the reason I mention all this is because today is Juneteenth, the 19th of June. And if you're tired of hearing about it, good. When we moved to Texas, I'd never heard of it either. It is not the day Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. That was in 1863. Proclamation 95 was an executive order, and Lincoln said, all of the slaves in the Confederacy are now free. In the Union, most states had already abolished slavery, so he wasn't freeing slaves in the United States. He was freeing slaves in the Confederacy, and he did that as a way to hobble the Confederacy. But it didn't quite happen automatically. It took 2 years for the Union to get all the way to South Texas, to Galveston, where they finally told the slaves, you're free. 1865. 3 years later, Scott Joplin was born. That was 155 years ago today. And I know 155 seems like a long time, and it is a long time. But in the same respect, if you're in your 70s, it's only 2 of your lifetimes. Not that long after all. I'm not saying anybody here watching this video is guilty of the crime of slavery. It's not my intent. But we are all, myself included, guilty of allowing the legacy of slavery to linger. Whether it's little things like a woman on a maple syrup bottle, or big things like systematic housing, healthcare, schools, education, things we feel like we can't fix or we don't want to fix. But we can. We really can. The first step is acknowledging that we have a problem. And once you do that, then solutions become apparent. And we can work toward getting this period of our history in the rearview mirror further and faster. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to shut up and play. That's what I'm good at. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a great start to your summer. We'll be back to Bach on Monday, or maybe Tuesday. This is my favorite piece by Scott Joplin. It's called Solace, a Mexican serenade, and it shows us a side of him we don't always get to see or hear. God bless you all.